Johnny Carson hosted The Tonight Show for 30 years and met every major star in Hollywood. But when the cameras stopped rolling, he saw their true faces. One Oscar winner smiled sweetly during her interview, then screamed at staff members and demanded they be fired. Another music legend grabbed a Korean War veteran by the tie and threatened him backstage. One guest made such inappropriate comments that Carson had to cut to commercial 3 times in one night. By the 1980s, Carson quietly banned several major stars from ever returning. What he witnessed behind the scenes would shock America forever. When Johnny Carson was just 12 years old, he found a magic book that changed everything. He was living through the Great Depression and money was tight, but he scraped together enough to order a magic kit through the mail. He practiced non-stop, always telling his family, "Pick a card, any card." His mother even made him a magician's cape. By the time he was 14, he started calling himself the Great Carson, doing magic shows for small crowds in Norfolk, Nebraska, making just $3 a show. His family had moved there from Iowa when he was 8, and little by little, he turned magic into his own way of escaping hard times. He performed at picnics and county fairs, getting better at speaking in front of people. Those small tricks would later help shape one of the most famous TV personas in history. After college, he started at WOW Radio in Omaha in 1949. He was only 24. They gave him his own 45-minute morning show called The Johnny Carson Show, but the pay was awful, just $50 a week. So he picked up other jobs on the side. He hosted dinners and banquets, sometimes performing for the same local politicians he just made fun of on air. One day, he even climbed up to the courthouse roof and pretended to interview pigeons about local corruption. When the station added television later that same year, Johnny moved in front of the camera. He started hosting a light-hearted show called The Squirrel's Nest. And that's when people first saw how funny and relaxed he could be on screen. In 1951, Johnny moved to Los Angeles to chase bigger dreams. But things didn't take off right away. He got a small job reading time and weather on KNX TV. After about a year, he finally got his own show called Carson Cellar. It was on a shoestring budget, airing in the evenings. But even with cheap sets and rough edges, his clever skits and funny characters stood out. That's how he caught the attention of Red Skelton in 1953. When Skelton hit his head during a rehearsal and couldn't go on air, Johnny filled in with barely an hour's notice. That night, millions of people saw him perform live for the first time. It was supposed to be a backup plan. Instead, it changed his life. CBS was so impressed they gave him his own primetime show. But that big break almost broke him. The Johnny Carson Show on CBS ran from 1955 to 1956, and it didn't go well. There were constant changes. 7 different directors, 8 writers, and nothing seemed to work. After 39 episodes, the network canceled it. Johnny said those months were filled with stress, sickness, and self-doubt. It felt like the end of everything. But later, his second wife, Joanne, found 10 old episodes tucked away in a closet. Episodes Johnny had saved and given her as a gift. In 2007, those lost shows were finally released on DVD, showing the world that even in failure, there was something special about him. Johnny had married his college sweetheart, Jody Walcott, back in 1949, just 2 months after starting his radio job. They had 3 sons together, Richard, Christopher, and Corey. But the marriage was rocky. According to a 2024 biography, their home was full of arguments, long silences, and deep resentments. By 1962, the same year Johnny became host of The Tonight Show, their relationship fell apart. They divorced in 1963. Both had affairs, and the split was painful. Years later, in 1991, tragedy struck when their son Richard died in a car accident at age 39. He had been driving along Highway 1 in California, possibly distracted while taking photos, when his car plunged off a steep cliff. He wasn't wearing a seatbelt and died instantly. The news crushed Johnny. He took 4 weeks off the show and later told viewers he had a laugh that was contagious as could be. Johnny's drinking started to get worse in the 1970s. By 1982, it spiraled out of control. That February, he was pulled over in Beverly Hills with a blood alcohol level of 0.16. way over the legal limit. His registration was expired, and the officer noticed something was wrong. Johnny admitted to drinking wine with dinner, but in truth, he had been battling alcohol for years. After pleading no contest in October 1982, he was fined, put on probation, and sent to alcohol education classes. The arrest could have destroyed his career, but instead it forced him into therapy. He later said that alcohol didn't make him fun. It made him angry, bitter, and explosive. Johnny's third marriage didn't help. He met Joanna Holland at the 21 Club in New York in 1971 and married her in secret the following year, just as his show was celebrating its 10th anniversary. He bought her a $500,000 mansion in Bear, once owned by a Hollywood director. But their relationship was full of lavish spending and public fights. Johnny was unfaithful. He drank. And by 1982, Joanna told him she wanted out. The divorce dragged on for 3 years. When it was final in August 1985, it cost Johnny an estimated $20 million, about $48 million today, making it one of the most expensive celebrity divorces of its time. Through it all, The Tonight Show was his anchor. On October 1, 1962, Johnny took over as host and slowly reshaped late-night TV forever. At its peak, 17 million people tuned in each night. He changed how talk shows worked, adding monologues, desk chats, skits, and recurring characters like Karnak the Magnificent. Johnny didn't just entertain. He made people feel at home. Even filmmaker Billy Wilder once said his show was the Valium and Nebutal of a nation. He calmed people when the world outside felt too loud. In 1967, he made a move that gave him complete control. Johnny told NBC he wanted the power to approve guests and shape the show his way. He explained years later that because his show was selling products like soup and dog food, not high-end luxury items, he had to keep things safe and broadly appealing. He carefully picked guests that wouldn't upset sponsors. He created comfort, not chaos. It wasn't just entertainment, it was strategy. In 1928, Joan Crawford changed everything. She wasn't just acting in Our Dancing Daughters. She was the spirit of the jazz age, wild and alive. The way she danced the Charleston on a table, wind blowing through her short bob haircut, made people stop and stare. Audiences couldn't take their eyes off her. She looked bold. She looked free. And she looked like the future. Right after the film exploded at the box office, MGM raised her pay from $1,000 to $1,500 a week and stopped making her take unpaid breaks. Suddenly, she was too important to pause. Scott Fitzgerald himself said she was the perfect flapper, and the movie earned over $1 million on a tiny budget, proving she wasn't just a star, she was a moneymaker. But then in 1938, something brutal happened. A trade group called the Independent Theater Owners of America put out a list and called her box office poison. Alongside other legends like Greta Garbo and Katharine Hepburn, Crawford was accused of being too expensive and not selling enough tickets. It was a public slap to the face. After almost 20 years, MGM let her go. Most thought she was finished. Then came Mildred Pierce in 1945. Joan fought for the role. The director wanted Bette Davis, but Crawford didn't back down. She humbled herself, did a screen test, and gave a performance that no one saw coming. She played a struggling single mother with so much fire and pain that it felt real. The Oscar she won for it was the only one in her career. She didn't even show up to the ceremony. Instead, she stayed in bed claiming to be sick, but her makeup and hair were flawless when she accepted the award at home. It wasn't just a win, it was revenge. Her personal life, though, was darker than most people knew. In 1935, she married Francho Tone. He was charming on the surface, but that charm turned into control and violence. They had met in 1933, but once they married, he couldn't handle being overshadowed by her fame. He drank too much. He hit her. Court records from their divorce in 1939 showed the bruises and the fights. She finally left him, but she never turned her back completely. When he got sick with cancer in the 1960s and was stuck in a wheelchair, she took care of him. After he died in 1968, it was Joan who handled his cremation. A year earlier in 1967, he had written her a letter saying sorry for the things he'd done while drunk and full of pills. But the worst stories came later. In 1978, Her daughter Christina wrote Mommy Dearest. The book said Joan had been a monster behind closed doors. Christina said her mother beat her, screamed at her, and went into fits of rage, especially when she found wire hangers in the closet. One time, she ripped all the clothes off the hangers, grabbed Christina by the hair, slapped her ears, and made her clean everything up while still yelling. Christina's brother Christopher, according to the book, was strapped to his bed every night so he couldn't go to the bathroom. The book sold like wildfire. The line, "No more wire hangers," became a cultural scream. But not everyone believed it. Joan's longtime secretary, her twin daughters, and staff said the book was full of lies. Still, that version of Joan stuck. One person who saw her real face was Johnny Carson. On October 1962, she appeared on the very first episode of The Tonight Show with him. On camera, she was perfect, smiling, funny, charming. But when the cameras turned off, Carson saw something he couldn't unsee. She yelled at the staff, insulted a crew member over a tiny mistake, and demanded they be fired. Carson was stunned. He later told people how different she was when she thought no one important was watching. That wasn't the only time Carson had to deal with someone like that. Frank Sinatra, too, had two sides. Back in 1940, Sinatra joined Tommy Dorsey's band. He was just 24 and only made $125 a week, but he was magic. On January 26, 1940, at the Coronado Theater in Rockford, Illinois, he stepped out and sang Stardust. People couldn't believe what they were hearing. Then came I'll Never Smile Again, which hit #1 in July and stayed there for 12 weeks. But leaving Dorsey wasn't easy. Dorsey threatened to take a third of Sinatra's future earnings. Some say Sinatra turned to the mob to get free in 1942. Dorsey's last words to him were bitter. "I hope he falls on his ass." Instead, Sinatra soared, but by the early 1950s, he nearly lost it all. Bette Davis wasn't just a star. She was a fighter. In 1935, she won her first Oscar for Dangerous, while earning just $12.50 a week at Warner Brothers. But she didn't even want it. She called it a consolation prize. The real award, she believed, should have come the year before for Of Human Bondage. That loss stayed with her. Then, in 1938, she finally got another Oscar for Jezebel. But what happened between those two wins would change Hollywood forever. In 1936, Bette told Warner Brothers she wasn't going to work unless they paid her $3,500 a week and gave her rights to her radio appearances. They said no, so she packed up and left for England. Over there, she signed with a British company called Toplitz and was promised $50,000. Warner Brothers wasn't having it. On September 9, 1936, they filed an injunction to stop her. Just over a month later, on October 19th, a British court ordered Bette to pay $80,000 to Warner Brothers plus legal fees. She lost, but something bigger had started. She became the first actor to openly challenge the studio system. Years later, this same kind of fight helped Olivia de Havilland win her famous court case in 1943. Bette might have lost the battle, but she shook the entire system. Then came Whatever Happened to Baby Jane in 1962. The film became famous for more than just the horror on screen. Behind the scenes, it was war. Bette Davis and Joan Crawford hated each other. It wasn't just rumors. During one scene, Bette stepped on Joan's head. In another, Joan filled her robe with weights. So when Bette dragged her across the floor, she pulled her back out. The bitterness didn't stop there. When Bette was nominated for an Oscar in 1963, and Joan wasn't, Joan made sure Bette didn't win. She reportedly went behind the scenes and convinced others to let her accept the award on behalf of the winner, and Braftoft. Bette later said, "Joan did not want me to have that Oscar." Even though they denied any feud publicly, Joan was handing out Pepsi on set, trying to act nice, but everyone could feel the tension. The director and producer struggled every day. The film made money, but it locked their rivalry in place forever. Bette's personal life wasn't peaceful either. She got married 4 times. The second one ended in heartbreak and mystery. In December 1940, she married Arthur Farnsworth, a businessman far from the chaos of Hollywood. With him, she found calm. But in August 1943, he died suddenly at age 35. 2 months before, he had fallen down the stairs at their New Hampshire home. On the day he died, he collapsed on Hollywood Boulevard. Doctors said it was from a skull fracture caused by an old blood clot. No one had seen it coming. He passed away at Hollywood Hospital. Bet was devastated. She was seen crying uncontrollably. Whispers started. People asked if the fall 2 months earlier had been an accident. Some questioned if there was abuse, but nothing was ever proven. Still, the loss broke her in a way no one could really fix. Her temper was just as famous as her talent. During the 1940s, her fights with co-stars were explosive. One of the worst was with Miriam Hopkins. The two had disliked each other since their theater days. Miriam had played Jezebel on Broadway, and she was furious when Betty got the Oscar for it in the film. They were forced to work together on The Old Maid, and things fell apart fast. In one key scene, Bet was supposed to shake Miriam hard, but Miriam kept going limp, like a rag doll every take. It ruined the moment. Beta stormed off the set in fury. Crowds gathered just to see if they'd actually hit each other. The director couldn't handle it. And this wasn't rare. Betty was known to throw scripts at people and demand endless retakes. Nothing was ever good enough. She wanted it perfect, always. Even in her later years, Bet didn't hold back. Jadzot Gabber never truly needed a script. Her life was the performance. In 1952, she made her film debut in Lovely to Look At. She played a character named Zadza because she basically was the character. Her beauty and charm made her stand out even when her acting didn't. But it was television that made her famous. In 1951, she joined Bachelor's Haven, giving wild relationship advice on air. One time, when a woman said her husband was cheating, Zadza said, "Shoot him in the legs." People loved it. She became a star just by being herself. Her love life was even more dramatic. She had 9 husbands, including Jack Ryan, the man who designed the Barbie doll. They married in 1975 and divorced a year later. One of her most troubling marriages was with Conrad Hilton. Their daughter Francesca was born during that time. But Zaza later said something truly disturbing about how that pregnancy happened. She said it wasn't by choice. In 1989, at age 72, she slapped a police officer. She was driving a white Rolls-Royce when she was pulled over in Beverly Hills. Her license was expired. There was an open bottle of booze in the car. When the officer told her to get out, she smacked him. That slap made headlines all over the world. She ended up in jail for 3 days and paid over $12,000 in fines. She called it self-defense. She said if a man insulted her, she'd slap him, even if he was the King of England. Mickey Rooney was once Hollywood's biggest star. At 16, he played Andy Hardy in A Family Affair in 1937. By 19, he was earning $5,000 a week during the Great Depression. In today's money, that's almost $100,000. He made 43 movies before he turned 25. But his personal life was just as intense. He married Ava Gardner in 1942. She was only 19. He was 21. Their marriage lasted just 14 months. She later said, "We were babies." By 1962, all that money was gone. He filed for bankruptcy with only $500 in cash and over $500,000 in debt. He had blown his fortune on gambling, bad investments, and alcohol. At one point, he even toured the South promoting a fake medicine called Hadacol just to stay afloat. He was also accused of harassing young actresses in the 1950s. Many women, later, said he used his fame to pressure them. Even Louis B. Mayer, the head of MGM, had to work hard to protect Rooney's public image. In the 1980s, Rooney went on The Tonight Show and made inappropriate jokes about female guests. Carson had to cut to commercial multiple times. After the show, he apologized to the women. He told producers not to bring Rooney back again.